Here we go. Oh, let me turn this off. Sorry. I have dual monitors. I do not want them to show up. All right. So if you are here today, we are looking at the presentation of close reading, culturally relevant music, and I will let the presenters introduce themselves. And I know there's one other presenter that will be joining us. So when that does happen, I don't know, you guys can introduce that person. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited for our session. I think it's gonna be really great.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Leilanda. So this is interactive. However, you know, we're all about do what's best for you in this space. So if you prefer to just sit and watch, we will give you a link at the end that will give you access to the presentation as well, and you'll be able to control it at your leisure. Whereas right now we have it set up so that way we will move the slides, but there'll be some interactive parts on there as well. So I will go ahead and share my screen. And let me move my screen. I have 3 monitors, so I'm like gonna move some things around.
Yeah, 3 monitors. That's next level.
Well, 2 monitors and then the computer, right?
Next level. Yep, Colleen, she is fancy. Don't let her fool you.
No, I've learned that see, don't we all? Thank you, Jane. All right, so you know, we'd love to start this off because we are talking about music, and this is something that we also do with our students. And when we present, yes, that's 3. There we go, Jane. And so we'd love to check in and just ask for you to share, you know, your go-to song on any given day, and then that song that you wish that you never heard. Yeah, we know you're a slacker to do it with that one. And so, you know, in this space, or if you prefer, just go ahead and put it in the chat. Toutoule, what's your go-to song on any given day?
I'm a big hip hop head, so I like Jay-Z. What's the name of that song? It's I will not lose. I will not lose ever. And I just like the song because he just talks about how he, you know, overcame all this obstacles and blew up. But I gotta be honest with you, this Silk Sonic is starting to drill a hole in my heart. They're out here, you know, making some feel-good music. So I'm feeling that a little bit.
Nice. And then what about the song that you wish you never heard before?
Song, I like music, so I don't know if I have any songs.
Well, Jane says that her song that she wished she never heard was It's a Small World.
It's a small world after
no,
that one.
Because then it becomes an earworm. Yes, yes, that's the only It's a Small World I know, unless there's another one, Jane. And then Carlo, oh no, Carlos said the Dora the Explorer theme song. Oh my gosh, my girls would cry.
Dora the Explorer.
Well, my son's 18 now. So there was a point like 12 years ago, it's like what happened with Frozen, where like it was too much. Yeah.
I'm right there with you, Carlos. I found that at the time that my girls were young, and then my cousin, he had his 2 young daughters, and we would go out as adults, but like we found ourselves singing that song like at the bar or at dinner and everywhere we went. Like,
no,
you know, we would remix it, we would rap it,
Yeah.
we would like do all these things, right?
all the talent shows, everybody was doing like 4 songs. Like you go to your kids' events forever, birthday parties, and you're like, it's the same one.
Yes.
When I lived in San Francisco like 25 years ago, it was the Gypsy Kings. Every cafe you entered into, you'd go, no, it's the Gypsy Kings again. I used to like that song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Colleen said the We Buy Any Car ad.
We buy any car.
I gotta find that one. Why? I'm trying to like remember that one. You haven't heard it? I don't know.
There's an ad for Febreze that I get all the time in the car. Like they know I need it.
That's, you know, I feel like they're really strategic with those things, right? Like it lends itself to that theory that the phones and everything is listening to us.
There's this commercial, it runs here I don't know if where people are in the country, but it runs here in LA. It's a lawyer, Jacob and Ronnie call Jacob. Like it comes on like every hour. It is
Can I tell you
crazy.
something about Jacob and Ronnie? He's actually one of my parents at my school.
No way.
Wow.
Stop lying.
Oh my God,
That
that's
is
the
amazing.
weirdest coincidence.
Yeah, so we're in California for everyone who doesn't know. And yes, Jacob and Ronnie, his ads are everywhere. Like you drive, yeah, see, it's a small world.
Wow.
And like you like drive on the freeway. I mean, in like he works in Beverly Hills, but like if you go to Palm Springs, it's there. If you go up north, it's there. And like Toutoule said, it's on every commercial.
Mhm.
He is one of my, like he has 3 kids at my school. And
Wow.
yes, so I know the Imranis. They are very known. All right.
Wow.
So let's go ahead and continue on. We've had some people who've just joined us. We were talking about the song, you know, our go-to song and the song that we wish that we never heard. And so we are going to move forward. Too fast. Sorry about that. All right. So you've been talking, you've been hearing us, you know, or you've been talking, but we've been talking and you don't know who we are. So we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves. There's typically 3 of us. Our friend Tory Wadlington is actually in an IEP at the moment, and so he'll jump in as soon as they finish. But I am Leticia Citizen. I am an I-4 coach at Hawthorne School in Beverly Hills Unified School District here in California. No, I don't live there. I actually commute, so it's 38 miles away. However, it takes me anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours to get one way to get to work, so that's fun. I have been an educator for 22 years. So I've taught kindergarten for 2 years, 1st grade for 7, 5th grade for 9, and then I've been a coach for a TK5 school for 4 years. And I'm currently doing my doctoral program with the University of San Diego.
Woohoo.
And I'll pass it over to Toutoule.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Toutoule Ntoya. I've been in education space. I think Leticia, we always say we started about the same time.
Yeah.
And I've been a classroom teacher. I've been an administrator. Right now, I'm an instructional coach and do a lot of consulting around maker spaces. Leticia and I do a lot of work around tech integration. And we do things like this, present and find ways to really talk about a lot of different topics. So really excited to be able to speak to you all about this today.
And just some fun facts that we love to share about the 3 of us is that we actually met each other at different conferences, which was really interesting. And especially because Dr. Ntoya and I, he lived and worked, and I worked in the same district for a long time, and we didn't even know it. So it took us to actually go to San Antonio for ISTE to meet each other, which was interesting. We have a combined education years of 45 years between the 3 of us. We're each married to supportive spouses, and we like to say this proudly, we are connoisseurs of fried chicken.
Yes. All day.
All right, so you've heard a little bit about us. We always love to find out who's in this space with us. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your name, your education role, your location, and a fun fact about you. Just a little tidbit before you start typing. If you are on the Nearpod, which I see that many of you are, when you type into this little rectangle, don't press enter until you are absolutely finished typing. It's not one of those things where you start to type and then it goes to the next line if you press return or enter. Otherwise, if you would love to just share in the chat, we would love to know who's in the space. Or if you want to mute yourselves, we'd love to hear others talk. So we'll give you some time to share that.
Yeah, it looks like we have a lively bunch. So I wonder if folks would be willing to step in and talk to us. Who's in the space?
Carlos is unmuted. Is that on purpose, Carlos?
I'd rather speak than type. I just came out of another
go ahead.
meeting. Used
There it
Padlet.
is, Carlos. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I'm also in California. I'm in Northern California, and I I have a PhD in English, but I didn't pursue it. I mean, I actually got a postdoc and I'm at Stanford and I do cool stuff here, but it's in biology now. I'm in the human biology program, and we're this very kind of like idealistic program that's combining neuroscience and social science and psychology and pediatrics and economics. And the whole idea is that you're not a bag of molecules. You're a human being, is everything from the genetic up to your environment. And, you know, we have students that are kind of all trying to save the world. But, you know, the intervention is at the level of like education, or it's at the level of like Planned Parenthood in the Middle East. They're trying to do these very difficult, you know, orphanage in Tibet. Like, what are the Chinese doing? They pick these projects and we fund them and they go off and go crazy. It's also undergraduate, so it doesn't have a graduate school program. It's got this, we've been offered, but our whole idea is we change it away from teaching if, you know, faculty were trying to grab people for the research. And I'm the tech. I'm kind of the person who enables, you know, technical enhancements and stuff like that. And that's the fun fact about me is I'm Portuguese.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I love-
Portuguese.
So you're at Stanford.
Yeah.
We were, so my family and I, we were just up north. We just returned yesterday. We were doing college tours and we couldn't get a schedule a tour for Stanford. So we'll have to go back.
You know, the trick is just to go, because everything's messed up because of the pandemic. You can walk
Right.
around and go in places, but a lot of services like that were regular and planned, they're just backed away from. I'm sure it's
or
the
they're
same thing in
limited.
LA. Yeah, everything
Yeah.
got broken by the pandemic.
Well, thank you again for sharing, Carlos. And then we have Jane, who is an administrator at SNHU. Is that the New Hampshire University?
South New Hampshire University, LMS.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To get out of her LMS admin bubble. I love that. Then we have Becky, who's an instructional designer at CU Boulder.
And Archer.
And she loves it. Oh,
Yeah.
and then I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Is it Tamara?
From the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It's Tamara. Thanks for
Tamara.
asking about the pronunciation.
Yes, Tamara. Thank you for clarifying. I'm a big person about like making sure that we're pronouncing each other's names correctly. Joining from the Netherlands. Wow. You know what? I think you were on my session yesterday. I had someone yesterday who was from the Netherlands.
Yeah, I was at your one that you did yesterday
Yes. Okay.
on the
welcome
quilts.
back. Hey.
Thank you. It was excellent. Glad to be at this one.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Virtual reality and stuff.
Oh, and then Jane added her fun fact. I have degrees in the humanities, double masters in historic present. Oh, wow.
Highly degree group here. This is fantastic.
Yes, this is awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing and being in this space. And so we're going to go ahead and move forward. I hope that we are not dismissing anyone who may be typing. This is like the hard part, right? Where we don't know if someone. Oh, see, I'm glad that I waited. Colleen just added hers. A doc student also at Florida State University, contract learning design work. Well, welcome all of you. So we hope that, that like, I'm a big person, you know, I'm that person that's like, wait, I'm trying to get it in. So I'm glad that we waited. All right, we're gonna move forward. So we're here to talk about how to use closed reading for culturally relevant music. And here we go. So we like to check in to find out how are you incorporating and engaging students using music. Again, you know, you can share in this space on the Nearpod, or if you want to go ahead and share in the chat or unmute yourselves. Toutoule, what was the first thing that you did to bring music into your classroom? You're muted because I see you thinking.
So when I was in the classroom, we didn't have the same level of technology to make it seamless. So, you know, doing things like warm-up activities, we would maybe talk a little bit about music. Maybe as a closing, we talk about music. Maybe in between, you know, kind of fill time, we talk about music. Or maybe when kids came in a little bit early, we would talk about those things, because, you know, teaching in certain schools, the schools that I worked at, the kids, you know, they all love to come in and they talked about music. So, but I was never able to integrate it into that. So I wish we had some of these strategies where I can actually integrate it into what I was teaching. But those are the only ways, really superficial, not really in depth, like we're gonna discuss now.
Nice. Yeah, for myself, you know, started off with just playing music, you know, in the classroom when we're doing work, and then students starting to ask like, hey, is it okay if I like come up with a playlist? So letting them go ahead and share their songs. And then because we were one-to-one, I think he has to check on this one real quick. Because we were one-to-one, then students started to say like, hey, can I just go ahead and put in my earbuds and listening that way? And it wasn't until I would say when I moved to first grade, my third year of teaching, like bringing in music and actually having students to go ahead and annotate or like share their thoughts or really incorporated into what we were learning. And then just honing in on those strategies as I went through, and then moving into fifth grade, really taking off in that aspect. And then even when I'm just presenting PDs or doing it with my teachers. So part of what I do at my job at school, while I don't have my own classroom, I do go in and do like co-teaching with teachers. I also teach digital citizenship. So bringing in music that way and having students to annotate and really engage and create their own songs. So we're going to talk about those things in a minute. But just checking in, did anyone else have some ideas of how they're doing it or that they wanted to share?
Yeah, I can, I'm sorry, Leticia, I had a little.
No, I know, you were checking on James.
A little situation. I'll talk to you about it later. Yeah, I know Tory just kind of share what he does is he sets the mood with his music, right? To, you know, when students walk in, and if it's going to be kind of a session where they're going to be doing lots of interacting, you know, he plays some upbeat music. If he's doing some work around, you know, something real specific and attention, and kids need to be focused for that period, he kind of plays some specific types of music for that too. So he uses music, I thought it's kind of cool, to kind of set the tone. And I think after a while, kids know by what music he's playing, what type of, what the activities are going to be for the day. So, you know, kind of get their mind right and get them in that state of mind.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of experience in this because both my wife and my son are musicians.
There it is.
So they use this all the time for everything, like, you know, to stop people from chewing out loud during dinner. We're just constantly listening to music. And they also are very knowledgeable. So there's just this endless, like, who is playing on that track of Coltrane kind of stuff going on. Like my son plays jazz, so most of it is this is about jazz. I'm the rube. I don't know anything about it. But if you're just in a family with people that are talking about it, I actually know quite a bit just because I'm around them constantly. And so I tried to do this first in my workshops, you know, over the pandemic, because you can kind of play intro music when you start online and everybody's like, doesn't know what they're doing, especially back in March 2020, it made people more relaxed. But again, you can set the tone. So you can play this very like, you know, Miles Davis mellow thing because you know you're about to have a difficult conversation about like grades, or you can kind of, you know, get them all hot and bothered because you're about to talk about politics and it's like Gil Scott Heron, or you can go Lacrimosa because it's right before Christmas and you're trying to get them to think about religion, or, you know. And so we reached the point we got our large, you know, alumni meetings to be using this. Even, you know, you have to be careful in larger groups, especially at Stanford, of older people, to think about what's the music that nobody's going to be put off by. But, you know, there was a little bit of an icebreaker of people realizing they could listen to music that was more out than they would normally listen to. Maybe this is a pandemic thing, but it's strange. There was a lot of growth during the pandemic of using music.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love that opportunity to connect with people around music. And I think that's one of the biggest things that when we do that, every time we talk about these sessions, is just how do we connect with people more? How do we connect with our students more? And to be able to bring in music that they appreciate and finding ways to incorporate that into what we're doing. And the more we're able to do that, I think the more we're able to connect with the students.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
then
younger kids really love it. I mean, you don't have to just, I always think that people play kids' music too much to kids. You can play anything. I mean, I guess you have to think about language, but they'll adapt to whatever, or, people play some things like the Beatles more, but you can go in some weird direction with students and they'll love it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like
for sure.
I do like a couple of why did I just lose his name now? Oh my gosh, a change is gonna come. I just lost his name. But there's a song that I play with both my students, and then
Oh,
Sam
Sam Cooke.
Cook.
Yes, I could hear it, but I didn't got the
Yes.
name. Yeah.
Yes. So Sam Cook. And what's interesting is then I'll like start to like do a playlist with him and like several others, but then students, well, I won't tell them that I'm doing that. And it's after we've already like did a deep dive into one of his songs. Tammy, I see your hands, so we'll come to you right now. But it's interesting that then when I play his music with other songs on a playlist, students will be like, oh my gosh, the citizen, is that Sam Cooke? And I'm like, okay, like, and we'll start to have a conversation about like, how did you know? What made you realize it? Or was it the type of music, because they're noticing a trend, was it his voice? And so like like you said, bringing music in that students typically wouldn't listen to, really helps broaden their horizon, and then helps them to like listen to the songs in a different way, right? Now they're paying attention to the lyrics, but now they're actually paying attention to what instruments are being played, how the song is composed, which is really exciting. Tammy, go ahead. You had a question, or you had your hand raised. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in because I used to be several decades ago, I was a classroom teacher and I use music all the time and I play instruments. So it was natural to do it for musicals and plays and things with the students. But I think at the university level, it's not so intuitive to think about how are you going to put music into your curriculum, or how are you going to incorporate it somehow. But during the pandemic, I agree with the person who was saying in the pandemic, there was a surge of it. And I know my colleagues were using it quite often, and they were basically asking students for playlists. And then during the breaks during your breaks, you would like play something off of a student's playlist, or maybe at the beginning of the class, you would have that music playing. So I think people thought about it again, and maybe it's also because people were trying to find ways to make the technology more human and to have those connections, even though you were doing something virtually. But I think one thing that was really inspiring to me as a student, who actually, when we were talking in our global awareness units about what represents us the best, or our values the best, and you had to present something about it, and she presented that she was playing still drums and she had learned it as a really young child, and then she still does it. And she brought in examples of her playing with parades and things in Aruba, where she was born and raised, and it was really inspiring for the entire group just to see that, and also the instrument itself being so interesting, and watching her play that instrument as a very young child, and then now knowing she still does it. And it was really a rich moment for, I think, everyone in the group.
That is awesome. I love
Yeah,
that.
I'm just thinking about the cultural relevancy behind that, right? Like this student was able to bring an article that represented her culture, and she's able to bring it to class and people were interested in it, right? I think it helps students who don't normally feel seen in our classroom settings to actually feel like someone's seeing them and someone cares about them as individuals. So there's a lot of cultural responsive things that are in these opportunities to share music with one another.
Right. And it segues perfectly into, why we should allow our students to interact and closely read music lyrics, right? They taps into students' prior knowledge and experiences, which definitely exudes diversity and inclusion. It cultivates a space where students' voices are shared. Like you said, Tammy, here was student who's able to like bring this in and bring a part of herself into the space. Relationships are definitely nurtured. It lends itself to a lens of diversity, really focusing on mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, thanks to Dr. Sims Bishop, who really goes into depth about this. A lot of times she connects it to books, but this can definitely be in connection to music and reading music lyrics and things of that nature, and really engage on issues surrounding culture, social justice, inclusion, and racial discourse. And then it's a critical primary source which students can immediately connect with. And I think that's the part that many teachers forget, that we're not bound by textbooks, right, and the curriculum, but that we can definitely bring in these primary sources, because it really allows for marginalized voices and otherwise voices that have been forgotten or forced to not be heard. It allows that way to come in. All right. And so we always like to talk about, why do we want to use primary sources? So we've got, again, like we said earlier, allow marginalized and forgotten voices to speak for themselves, encourages additional evidence through research, promote deeper understanding of history, relates in a personal way to events of the past, and then develops investigative skills that translates into other areas. And then Jane had a question: what do you do when students have hearing issues?
Yeah, so there's, there are lyrics that were incorporated into this, so students can read lyrics. And then Tory brought this up during our last session, the third member of our crew here, and he said like the rhythms and the bass of the music allows kids to kind of tie into the music as well. So being able to have not only the lyrics printed out, but also allowing kids to just kind of feel the pulse of the music is another way of integrating some of this and being more inclusive of all of our students.
Right, especially because of the way that they hear it or the way that they feel it, right? That they offer a different perspective for other students too, who are able to hear it in a way, right, that we probably all do. But then the students who do have those hearing impairments, like the way that they feel it and allowing them to describe it adds a whole nother layer. And Tori did a great job of talking about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go, but I just want to say a last thing before I go. I have to be gone by 12:30. Is that I think one of the coolest things with music is that often students already know it.
Yes.
Like they already know a folk song or something, but they've
Yes.
never been told what it's about. So in the last couple years, there's all this folk stuff about plague, like Ring Around Rosie, Pocket Full of Posy, Ashes, Ashes, You All Fall. It's like 800-year-old song that's made it because there's been so many plagues, and it's a children's song. So you can take things that people kind of have never thought about, and they often raise these culturally sensitive issues in a better way than you can directly. That's one of the coolest things about music, I think.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you for spending time with us, Carlos.
Yeah.
Carlos.
I think this was my favorite thing so far. Good luck. Bye.
Well,
Thank you.
Did you want the link to be able to access this?
Oh, I have it. I copied it, the Nearpod.
Right, but this link won't, the one that you're using right now won't work.
Oh, okay.
Later, so it's actually a bit.ly here. I'm putting it in the chat. So we have to go. That's the one that then you'll be able to access the Nearpod by yourself.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
All right, so we like to start off with a song by her, I Can't Breathe. And so we wanted to walk you through, like we have like 20 minutes left. We wanted to walk you through some of the activities that we've done with our students. We always like to say that we like to go beyond just our first listen. So we like to do a third and fourth listen as well with students, and each time they're doing a different thing between hearing and listening or feeling or having access to the lyrics. We might bring in the video. So we want to walk you through some of those things. We also offer not only virtual options of what strategies you can use, but also how to modify that if you are in person or if you're doing hybrid. So whatever learning space that you have at that time. And then we're always open to new ideas as well to add. So we're going to start off by first listening. And we're going to ask you, we set up a Padlet, and we're going to ask you if you can to go ahead on that Padlet and just jot down feelings, right? That you know, without talking, you're going to jot down your initial feelings about the song on the Padlet. And then when you finish, we always like to encourage our students to go ahead and read what their peers have shared. And this is not about like, oh yeah, this reminds me of, or, you know, I disagree, but what we're going to do, just because it's people's initial feelings, we want to honor those feelings that people have shared. And so we just encourage our students that if you do want to respond, just go ahead and respond with, I hear you. And it's just a simple way to acknowledge, like, you know, hey, I felt that too, or, you know, didn't think about it, but we're just going to respond with, I hear you kind of thing. Anything you want to add to that, Toutoule, before we play the first song?
Yeah, and you know, Carlos left. I know he's the neuroscience guy, but like the amount of things that are happening in your brain with these multiple listens and how it gets encoded in your brain is really important, and the conversations that go along with it. So having these multiple listens, whether it's 2 listens, 3 listens, 4 listens, it allows you to layer on different things as we're listening. So this first listen might just be to, you know, just get whatever you can. And the second listen, maybe a little more specific. But as we're listening to the same song in multiple situations, we're able to make more connections in our long-term memories. We're able to connect those synapses, and I think that cements the learning. And if you can add content along with this, so the kids can connect some type of content out there that they're learning along with what they're listening to, make that connection, then it brings the music to a whole new, brings a whole new light to the situation, to this music and the learning that they're doing in our classrooms.
So right now you should have access to the Padlet. We just ask that you're in the first column where it says listen 1. If you've never used Padlet before, there's a plus sign at the bottom that once you click that plus sign, your box will pop up, and this is where you can type. Or if you prefer to share in the chat, or if you just want to listen and sit with your feelings, that's perfectly fine too. So we're going to go ahead and take our listen for the first time. Yeah, it does, Jane. Oh my gosh, it's one of my favorites. All right, so I'll take a minute. Thank you for those who shared in the space. Leah, thank you for being here. She's gone. For those of you that are just joining, we just listened to a song by her called I Can't Breathe. And this was the first listen. And we just asked students. And again, we would just have students to go ahead and jot down their initial feelings. And then they would read each other's responses. And if they wanted to respond, they would just respond with, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking discussion forums, and at the higher ed level, being able to use the comments as a discussion forum on what her was trying to convey, and just having that conversation. Like right now would be a great time just have that, jump into that conversation and see what folks are saying, and then being able as an educator, connect that with the content that we're learning, right? Make that connection, to help kids make that connection, or students make that connection.
All right. And so then, again, in that first lesson, right, we, if instead of using tech, maybe you have students, yeah, Jane, I agree. What I love, for my younger students, when I do this, they always need a break after this. So being definitely in touch with your students about like their needs, or just going ahead and set up that space. Like, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute breather, to move about, take care of some personal needs, being mindful of students who may be triggered. That's another layer that you have to consider as well. And typically when you've already set up these safe spaces, right? Like, this is definitely not something that you do on the first day with your students. It's after you've built trust and built a space where students feel safe enough to go ahead and be vulnerable, who are still learning to do that, right? Being mindful of all of those things is definitely important. It's not, I would say, I always tell teachers, it's not a reason to not do it. It's a reason to be mindful and really build those relationships in the classroom and pushing beyond it. Well, Toutoule, do you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to really reiterate that, like creating that safe space, and to, be ready for what's going to come down and what folks are going to talk about, and what the level of conversation is going to be, and how do we like move it along, and be able to really have impactful conversations. And because we don't create the space, if we're not creating a safe space, then these conversations can kind of go in different places that we may not intend on it going. So I think it's really important that we're able to set that foundation, that your class culture knows that this is the conversation we're going to have, and this is the level that we're going to do, and everyone has some level of comfortability and freedom to say what comes up for them through the lyrics.
Right. And the other thing too is having students understand that like we're all going to start in our perspective initially, and the goal is then to add on, right? Like we're going to learn from each other, and there's movement, there's growth with all of us. So that way we don't, where we end is not where we started, right? And that in hopes of like we're continuously doing this and learning about each other and learning from each other in these spaces. So again, we offer like tips of how to do this. Like if you want to do it in person, right? If you want to move beyond the digital tech and you're using Post-its or having students write in journals, you again, as the teacher, decide if you want students to comment on each other's shared feelings, and then also acknowledging that feelings do not have to be shared. So still giving students that space to go ahead and write and jot down what they're feeling, but like also providing a space where they don't have to share them if they don't want to, is really important. So then people always ask, like, do you do all the listens at one time? I typically like to do at least 2 at a time, especially like for something that is heavy. And so the next one that we usually jump into is a stop and draw. So you saw, like I set up a space here where, if you're doing this again in person, and I had set this up on Google Drawing, so you can have that space for students to do it on, or if they just want to do it on paper, right, having them to just divide it into 3 lines, and it doesn't have to be even, but they divide it into thirds. They can choose one section that they want to begin drawing. This is where the teacher, you need to know where you want to stop the song, because you want to stop it 3 times. Right, so finding where you think, okay, this would be perfect to stop it here. They go ahead and draw, begin drawing in their section. So this is kind of the, what's the big thing? Sketch notes, right? Sketch noting, this could be that kind of thing, but begin drawing in the section, either of what they hear, what they feel, what they're visualizing, anything that just comes to mind, they can just go ahead and start jotting down. Some students will start doodling or drawing while the song is playing, but you stop at those 3 points just to give students time to finish up whatever that they're drawing or whatever that they're sketching in those sections. And then having volunteers, right, to go ahead and share their drawing. Also, if you are doing this virtually, providing a space, so you notice that the palette we had set up into columns. So then when that second listen, right, when we were doing this virtually, we had students go ahead and take a picture of their drawing and then share it on the Padlet for others to see. So providing those spaces, or if you're in the classroom, having to put them up. Again, if you have students who say hey, I don't want to share, again, giving them that space to do that as well. And having those conversations with them to, just to check in. And just because they don't want to share doesn't mean that they don't want to participate or anything like that, but checking in with them to just say hey, I just want to see what's going on, and just have an idea of where they are, but honoring their choices that they're making. All right, so we're down to 4 minutes, so we're gonna go through quickly and just share with you what's also here in this space. So again, we offer teacher tips about the second listens, what to do in those cases for virtual and in person. Then we talk about what to do on a third listen, using, now you're going to give the lyrics to students to go ahead and follow along. So now they've been listening to it, but now giving them the words, right? You get students who will say, oh, that's not what I heard, or this is what it is. But now giving them the lyrics to match up. And this is where I love to use the closed reading tactics with them. So here are the lyrics printed out. And then this is a poster that I have displayed in my classroom where students are going to go ahead and note any questions that they have, right on the document itself, what was surprising to them, what they found to be an important parts that they loved and why they loved it, why it's their favorite. If they're making a connection to something personal or maybe something that they've been learning in the classroom, some main ideas, and then some evidence to support that main idea. Toutoule, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we make sure when we're doing these activities, we're connecting back to the content, right? Whatever it is you're teaching, where is a connection between what they're learning and this song, right? To kind of cement, to almost sandwich those 2 ideas together into their long-term memory to help with their acquisition of information.
Right. And then again, because we were doing this in virtual settings, using Jamboard, so leveraging those platforms that we have access to go ahead for students to, do some lyric annotation, whether that's online. So we had set up Jamboards for students to go ahead and share what questions that they had, right? Taking again those closed reading tactics that were on the poster, but then putting it in a space that's virtual for students to go ahead and connect together and share. Or students, you can set it up so that way it force copies for every student, and they have their own and they're working on their own. And then again, sharing that link so that way others can go in and read what they're saying. because I'm someone who believes in like students having a space to always share what they're creating and their thoughts. So that way they have a wider audience and they're not just doing it because the teacher said, kind of thing. And so again, we've got some teacher tips. We're down to 1 minute. Okay. And so again, we then do this again with Fear with Kendrick Lamar, that, and we give you access, and again, we go through like what the first round, the second round, the third round, the fourth, and even adding a fifth. Well, now they're pulling in primary sources, right? So letting them have access to like Getty Images or Gilder Lehrman or NEH. There's so many websites that, like Toutoule said, connecting it back to the content. And so now, going and accessing, maybe you curated primary sources and they go and like choose 3 to 4 images or primary sources that then connect to the theme that they found in that song. And then they're going to go ahead and do some writing with that, or creating poetry, creating their own lyrics, right? So giving them those opportunities to do that. And then ways to bring music in students' learning. So comparing originals and samples, that's always a fun thing to do. Analyze songs that represent students' families, couple them with picture books with music, and include at least one song for every lesson or several for them. Do stop and draws, create thematic playlists, right? And have students create those, writing about authors' lyrics, and then writing besides song lyrics is always a good thing to do. Anything you want to add to Toutoule before?
No, I mean, these are all great strategies, and whichever one you use, I think students will really jump into it. I like this this picture book idea. Again, having kids or students create pictures and connect, use those pictures to connect with the content, the lyrics, and all that. So pictures, I'm a big fan of pictures, and being able to integrate that into your learning is a really impactful strategy.
Absolutely. And then we gave you the link that will give you access to this whole presentation, so that you can control it on your own. I want to make sure it works, because I think it does. Yeah, it does. So so that link is there for you to access. There's also some resources that we included. Also, shout out to the social justice standards are there. And then this is one of the annotation charts that I use with my students. And then these are the other 3 that I also use. You all are so welcome. Any last minute thoughts, Toutoule? Oh,
I just wanted to say that I posted the feedback so that you guys could have access to it if you want to click it, but it's also on the calendar. So if you really like this session and you want to give that feedback, then you can. So I just wanted to say that. But thank you. It was a great session. Thank you so much.
thank you.
I'm going to stop recording.
Always connect with us. We've given you